the Golden Dome. It wasn't just a catchy name Trump cooked up over a late-night burger, well maybe it was. But his people, the ones in sharply pressed uniforms, presented it as the next big thing in defense. A shield, a glittering, technologically advanced umbrella, designed to protect North America from, well, from everything. Rogue missiles, unfriendly drones, maybe even particularly aggressive geese, though that part was less clear in the briefings. The idea was total impenetrable protection, a beautiful, beautiful dome, as Trump would say, and naturally it would be gold, or at least gold-colored, because optics. The system itself was described in vague yet impressive-sounding terms. A network of interconnected satellites, ground-based interceptors, lasers, lots of lasers, all controlled by a super AI, probably also named something suitably grand like Liberty Prime or Freedom Eagle. The Golden Dome was meant to be a technological marvel, a testament to American ingenuity, and conveniently, a project with a very hefty price tag. A price tag that America's friends, its very dear friends, would be expected to help cover. Because friendship, in Trump's world, often came with an invoice, especially when it involved shiny, expensive things. The primary objective, they claimed, was to create an invulnerable sanctuary over the continent. No missile, whether from a rogue state or a major power, would get through. It was the ultimate peace-through-strength play, or, depending on your cynicism level, the ultimate military-industrial complex payday. The demand was delivered with typical Trumpian subtlety, like a sledgehammer wrapped in a flag. 61 billion US dollars, that was Canada's share, for their slice of the Golden Dome's protective embrace. The figure seemed plucked from thin air. Why 61? Not 60? Not 62? Insiders hinted it was based on some complex calculation involving GDP, landmass, and perhaps the current price of maple syrup, or maybe it was just a number Trump liked the sound of. 61. It's a strong number, a winning number. He probably said that, but it wasn't just about the money. Trump, ever the negotiator, offered an alternative, an out, as he might put it. If the 61 billion was too steep, Canada had another option. A simple, elegant solution. They could just join the United States, become the 51st state. He presented it as a generous offer, a chance to be part of something bigger, something greater, something, well, American. He probably imagined a grand ceremony, the Canadian Prime Minister tearfully handing over the keys to the country, a new star on the flag. It was all very clear in his mind. The implications were staggering. For Canada, it was an existential threat dressed up as a business proposal. Pay an exorbitant sum for a defense system of questionable necessity and efficacy. Or relinquish your sovereignty, cease to exist as an independent nation. It was a choice between financial ruin and national dissolution. Canada's response was swift. It was firm. It was, in its own way, incredibly Canadian. There were no fiery speeches filled with outrage, at least not initially. Instead, there was a calm, almost surgical dismantling of Trump's proposal. The Prime Minister, looking rather pained but resolute, addressed the nation. He thanked the United States for its creative thinking. He acknowledged the long history of friendship and cooperation. Then, he got to the point. The $61 billion? Not feasible, he said with an air of stating the obvious. As for the 51st state idea, that received an even clearer, though still polite rejection. Canada is not for sale, the Prime Minister stated. Our sovereignty is not negotiable. The words were simple, direct, unequivocal. There was a quiet strength in the delivery, a sense that this was not a bargaining position but a fundamental truth. Canada, with its distinct culture, its 2 official languages, its parliamentary system, was quite happy being Canada. The idea of trading it all in for a star on a different flag was, to put it mildly, a non-starter. The politeness was there, but underneath, steel. Behind the scenes, Canadian diplomats worked channels. They explained patiently to their American counterparts that this was not how alliances worked, that demands and ultimatums were counterproductive. That Canada, while a steadfast ally, was also a proud and independent nation. Trump's demand cut to the heart of Canadian identity sovereignty. For Canada, independence is not just a political concept, it's a deeply ingrained part of the national psyche. It's about charting its own course, maintaining its own distinct cultural fabric. The idea of surrendering that was unthinkable. It was like asking a beaver to give up dam building. It just wasn't going to happen. The Golden Dome raised sovereignty concerns. Who would control this massive defense system? Whose finger would be on the button? If Canada paid billions, would it get an equal say? Or would it be a junior partner? These were not trivial questions. For a country that prides itself on its independent foreign policy, ceding control was uncomfortable. It felt less like a partnership and more like a protectorate. Historically, Canada has always walked a fine line, benefiting from its close relationship with the US, while fiercely guarding its autonomy. From trade deals to cultural policies, the preservation of Canadian sovereignty has been a constant theme. Trump's proposal felt like a bulldozer crashing through that balance. It was a reminder of the power imbalance in the relationship, and it forced Canadians to confront what it means to be Canadian in a world dominated by superpowers. Section 5, NORAD's Shadow Old Pacts, New Pressures. The Golden Dome proposal didn't exist in a vacuum. North America already had a long-standing defense alliance, NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, a joint US-Canadian operation. For decades, NORAD has monitored the skies, protected against airborne threats, tracked Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. It was a symbol of close cooperation, of shared responsibility, of mutual trust. Trump's unilateral demand for a new, vastly expensive system with an American-centric control structure seemed to ignore this history, or worse, to dismiss it. NORAD represented a partnership. Decisions were made jointly. Information was shared. Canadian officers worked alongside American officers. It was a model of how two sovereign nations could collaborate on vital security matters. The Golden Dome, as envisioned by Trump, felt different. It felt imposed. It felt like America dictating terms. This new pressure strained the existing framework. If the US was willing to bypass established channels and make such demands, what did that mean for the future of NORAD? Section 6, Global Ripples, a domestic dispute goes international. This wasn't just a family squabble between North American neighbors. Trump's Golden Dome demand and Canada's firm rejection sent ripples across the globe. Other allied nations watched closely. If the US was treating Canada this way, what did it mean for them? Countries in Europe and Asia felt a little less secure. Was this the new model for American foreign policy? Transactional and dismissive of long-standing relationships? The implications were unsettling. Traditional adversaries watched with satisfaction. Any sign of division within Western alliances was welcome. They portrayed Canada as standing up to a bully. This narrative served their geopolitical interests. The Golden Dome dispute became another data point in their argument that American global leadership was waning. International organizations also took note. Was this a sign of a broader American retreat from international cooperation? Or just another example of Trump's unique disruptive style? The uncertainty itself was damaging. Global stability relies on predictability, and Trump's Golden Dome gambit was anything but predictable. It introduced a new element of chaos into an already turbulent world. For smaller nations, Canada's stance was particularly significant. Section 7. Twitter storms and expert takes, the world weighs in. As news of Trump's ultimatum broke, social media erupted. Twitter, or X as it was now sometimes called, became a battleground of hashtags and hot takes. #Golden Dome, #Canada Strong, #51st State Not Today, #Trump Demands trended globally. Memes proliferated. Images of beavers in battle armor, moose staring down eagles, gallons of maple syrup being poured defiantly onto American waffles. The humor was sharp, often biting, but beneath it lay a genuine sense of outrage, particularly from Canadians and their supporters. It was digital defiance, 280 characters at a time. Political analysts and foreign policy experts scrambled to offer their interpretations. Some saw it as classic Trump, a maximalist opening bid designed to shock and awe with the expectation of settling for something less. He doesn't really want Canada to be the 51st state, one pundit opined on a cable news show. He just wants them to pay more for defense. This is his way of getting their attention. Others were less sanguine. They saw a dangerous disregard for international norms, a willingness to bully allies, a fundamental misunderstanding of Canada itself. Section 8. The Trump Playbook, all bluster, no maple syrup. Understanding Trump's Golden Dome demand requires a look at his playbook. The man fancies himself a master negotiator. His strategy often involves outrageous opening demands, public pressure, threats, and a belief that everyone has a price. He had used these tactics in business. He had used them in international diplomacy with varying degrees of success. With Canada, he likely thought it would be no different. He probably envisioned the Canadian Prime Minister, flustered and intimidated, rushing to Washington to make a deal. Any deal. The problem was, Canada wasn't a failing casino or a struggling golf course. It was a sovereign nation, with a strong sense of identity, and a deep aversion to being bullied. Trump's usual tactics, the bluster and the bravado, didn't quite land. The Canadians didn't blink, they didn't panic. They politely but firmly said no. This was not in the script Trump had imagined. He expected capitulation, or at least a counteroffer. He got a lesson in Canadian stubbornness, a very polite stubbornness, but stubbornness nonetheless. Some analysts suggested Trump never truly expected Canada to agree to become the 51st state. That was the shock part of the offer. Section 9. Northern Exposure. What future for the 49th parallel? So, what now? After the demand, the rejection, the global commentary, what does the future hold for US-Canada relations? The Golden Dome incident highlights real and potential tensions. Trust, once eroded, is hard to rebuild, especially between neighbors who share the world's longest undefended border. That border, a symbol of peace and cooperation, suddenly felt a little more defined. One possible scenario is a cooling of relations, a period of strained diplomacy. Canada might look to diversify its partnerships further, to strengthen ties with other nations, to reduce its reliance where possible on the United States. The two economies are too deeply intertwined, the cultural connections too strong, but a shift in emphasis, a more cautious approach to its southern neighbor, that seems plausible. The Golden Dome might not get built, but its shadow could linger. Another possibility is that after the initial fireworks, things gradually return to a more normal, if slightly warier, equilibrium. Politics is often about pragmatism. Both countries need each other. Trade continues. Cooperation on security matters, perhaps through a reformed NORAD, would still be essential. Future American administrations might work to repair the damage, to reassure Canada that the alliance is valued, that sovereignty is respected. But the memory of the Golden Dome demand, the sheer audacity of it, would not be easily forgotten. It would become a cautionary tale.